The diplomatic shuttle Harmony's Edge descended through the crimson atmosphere of Keth'vari Prime, its hull groaning against the thick, sulphurous air. Captain Marcus Chen adjusted his environmental suit one last time, checking the atmospheric readings on his wrist display. The gravity here was 1.3 times Earth standard, and the air was barely breathable even with filters. "Remember, gentlemen," Ambassador David Harrison said, his voice crackling through the comm system, "this is humanity's first formal contact with the Keth'vari Empire. Everything we do here sets the precedent for future relations." Marcus nodded, though his attention was partly focused on the viewport. The Keth'vari capital city sprawled below them like a massive hive, its towers twisted and organic-looking, as if grown rather than built. Somewhere down there waited the apex predators of this world, beings so fearsome that even the galactic community's most hardened warriors spoke of them in hushed tones. Dr. James Miller, the expedition's xenobiologist, was practically vibrating with excitement in his seat. The preliminary scans show they're incredible specimens. 8 feet tall on average, natural armor plating, retractable claws that can cut through titanium, and those roars. The acoustic analysis suggests they can produce sounds at frequencies that trigger primal fear responses in most species. "Wonderful," muttered Sergeant Tom Bradley, the mission security chief. "And we're supposed to shake hands with these things?" Marcus allowed himself a small smile. If only they knew what waited in the cargo hold of his personal transport back on the orbital station. But that was a story for another time, assuming they all survived this diplomatic venture. The shuttle touched down on a crystalline landing pad, its surface rippling like water at their arrival. Through the viewport, Marcus could see their welcoming committee approaching, 3 massive figures moving with the fluid grace of apex predators. Even at this distance, he could see the gleam of natural armor plates, the casual way they carried their bulk, and the aura of barely contained power that surrounded them. Ambassador Harrison's face had gone pale behind his helmet's faceplate. "Dear God," he whispered, "they're magnificent and terrifying." The largest of the 3 Keth'vari approached the shuttle, even hunched slightly forward in what Marcus assumed was a respectful posture. The being stood nearly 9 feet tall. Its hide was a deep purple-black, marked with intricate scarring that spoke of ritual significance. Golden eyes, each the size of Marcus's fist, fixed on the shuttle with an intelligence that was both alien and unmistakably predatory. "That's High Packleader Vorthak," Dr. Miller said, consulting his datapad. "He's one of the most influential figures in their empire. The scars indicate he's defeated at least 30 challengers in ritual combat." The shuttle's ramp lowered with a hydraulic hiss, and immediately the thick, heavy scent of the Keth'vari homeworld flooded their environmental suits' external sensors. It smelled of copper, ozone, and something wild and untamed that made every human instinct scream danger. High Packleader Vorthak stepped forward, his movement causing the crystalline ground to vibrate slightly. When he opened his mouth to speak, Marcus caught sight of fangs longer than his fingers, each one capable of puncturing steel. But what came next was what the humans would remember for the rest of their lives. Vorthak drew in a breath that seemed to expand his massive chest to impossible proportions, tilted his head back, and released a roar that shook the very foundations of the landing pad. It was a sound that spoke of primal dominance, of the hunt, of death dealt swiftly in the darkness. It was the voice of a creature that had never known fear, that stood at the apex of its world's food chain, that could tear apart a dozen lesser beings without breaking stride. The sound waves hit the humans like a physical force. Ambassador Harrison stumbled backward, his face white with terror behind his helmet. Dr. Miller dropped his datapad, his hands shaking uncontrollably. Sergeant Bradley's hand moved instinctively to his sidearm, every combat instinct screaming at him to fight or flee. But Marcus Chen didn't flinch. He didn't step back, didn't reach for a weapon, didn't show any sign of the primal fear that was coursing through his companions. Instead, he stepped forward, removed his helmet to show his face, and did something that made the Keth'vari freeze in shock. He smiled. 15 years earlier, 8-year-old Marcus Chen pressed his face against the reinforced glass of the xenobiology lab, watching as the technicians prepared the containment unit. His father, Dr. Richard Chen, head of the Titan Research Station's Xenobiology Department, stood beside him with a mixture of professional excitement and parental concern. "Are you sure about this, Dad?" Marcus asked, his breath fogging the glass. "Mom always said never to bring work home." Dr. Chen chuckled, ruffling his son's hair. "Well, technically, we're not bringing him home. He's staying in Lab 7. And your mother isn't here to object anymore." The pain in his father's voice was carefully controlled, but Marcus heard it anyway. It had been 6 months since the transport accident, 6 months since their family had been reduced from 3 to 2. The research station felt enormous and empty without his mother's laughter echoing through the corridors. "Besides," Dr. Chen continued, "this little fellow needs constant care. The automated systems aren't enough. He needs a family." The little fellow in question was currently the size of a large dog, though the xenobiologists assured them he wouldn't stay that way. His species was called Apex Predator Classification Unknown, APCU-001 in the files, though Marcus had already decided to call him Rex. Rex was the sole survivor of a crashed alien vessel, found drifting in deep space by a mining crew. His parents, along with the rest of his pack, had died in the crash. The infant had been badly injured, malnourished, and traumatized. Most of the research team had voted to keep him sedated for safety reasons, but Dr. Chen had argued for a different approach. Isolation and chemical restraint will make him aggressive and unstable, he'd argued in the staff meetings Marcus sometimes overheard. He needs socialization. He needs to learn that not all contact with other species means violence. Now, as the technicians finished their setup, Marcus got his first close look at the creature that would change his life forever. Rex was covered in soft, gray-black fur that would eventually harden into armored plates. His claws, currently the size of Marcus's fingernails, retracted and extended as he flexed his paws in his sleep. Even as an infant, his muscles were clearly defined beneath his fur, speaking of the incredible strength he would one day possess. "He's beautiful," Marcus whispered. His father smiled. "Your mother would have loved him." The containment unit was more like a luxury habitat than a cage. Spacious, with climbing structures, soft bedding, and environmental controls that mimicked his species' homeworld. But it was still a barrier between Rex and the rest of the universe. Can I go in with him?" Marcus asked. Dr. Chen hesitated. Even as an infant, Rex was potentially dangerous. His species was known to be highly territorial, aggressive, and possessed of strength that could easily kill a human adult. But looking at his son's face, the first genuine excitement he'd shown since his mother's death, Dr. Chen made a decision that went against every safety protocol in the book. "We'll start slow," he said. "Supervised visits. Short ones." Marcus's first meeting with Rex was conducted through the feeding slot, a small opening that allowed for the passing of food and water. Rex was awake now, his golden eyes curious and alert. When Marcus approached, the alien infant tilted his head, studying the strange new creature with obvious intelligence. "Hey there, Rex," Marcus whispered, extending one finger through the slot. "I'm Marcus." Rex sniffed at the offered finger, his nostrils flaring. Then, with infinite care, he extended one tiny claw and touched Marcus's fingertip. The contact sent a thrill through the boy. This was first contact, the first friendly interaction between his species and Rex's. Over the following days, the visits grew longer and more interactive. Marcus would read to Rex, tell him stories about Earth, describe the taste of ice cream and the feeling of rain. Rex, in turn, began to respond with soft chirping sounds, the infant version of what would eventually become bone-shaking roars. 3 weeks into their friendship, Dr. Chen made another decision that would have horrified the safety committee. He opened the containment unit. "Marcus," he said carefully, "Rex has been showing signs of depression. Isolation is killing him faster than any physical injury did. I think he needs more than just visits." Marcus looked at his father with wide eyes. "You mean?" "I mean, Rex is part of our family now. Really part of it." By the time Marcus turned 12, Rex had grown to the size of a small horse. His soft infant fur, had begun hardening into the armored plates that would eventually make him nearly invulnerable. His claws had grown to 6 inches long and could cut through steel like paper. When he was excited or playing, his roars could be heard 3 levels away from their quarters. And he was still, in every way that mattered, Marcus's best friend. "Rex, stay," Marcus commanded, holding up one hand as he prepared to throw a titanium ball across the cargo bay they'd converted into a play area. Rex crouched low, his muscles coiled like springs, golden eyes fixed on the ball with predatory intensity. "Good boy," Marcus said, then hurled the ball as hard as he could. Rex exploded into motion, his powerful legs launching him across the bay in bounds that covered 20 feet at a time. He caught the ball in midair, his momentum carrying him up the wall and across the ceiling. His claws found purchase even in the artificial gravity, before landing gracefully and trotting back to Marcus with the ball held gently in jaws that could bite through a steel beam. Dr. Chen watched from the observation deck, still amazed by the bond his son had formed with the apex predator. Rex was now physically capable of killing every person on the research station without breaking a sweat, but around Marcus, he was as gentle as a house cat. "It's remarkable," Dr. Yuki Tanaka, the station's chief psychologist, said as she joined Dr. Chen at the window. "Rex shows all the territorial and aggressive behaviors we'd expect from his species when dealing with other humans, but with Marcus, he's pack," Dr. Chen finished. "Marcus raised him from an infant. In Rex's mind, Marcus is family. More than family, Marcus is his pack leader." They watched as Marcus scratched behind Rex's auditory organs, the equivalent of ears, causing the massive predator to collapse onto his side in blissful contentment, rumbling with pleasure. "The question is," Dr. Tanaka continued, "what happens when Rex reaches full maturity? Our projections suggest he'll be over 8 feet tall and weigh nearly half a ton. His territorial instincts will be in full force. Will he still recognize Marcus's authority?" Dr. Chen didn't answer, but the question haunted him. Rex was approaching adolescence in his species' development, and already there had been incidents. Last week, Rex had severely injured a maintenance worker who'd entered their quarters without Marcus present. The man had survived, but just barely. The research station's administration was getting nervous. There had been meetings, discussions of containment protocols and safety measures that sounded suspiciously like suggestions to put Rex back in a cage or worse. "We need to start thinking about Rex's future," Dr. Chen said finally. "He can't stay on the station forever." Marcus must have sensed the serious tone of the conversation because he looked up at the observation window and waved. Rex followed his gaze and, seeing Dr. Chen, let out a soft roar of greeting, still loud enough to vibrate the reinforced glass. That evening, over dinner in their private quarters, Dr. Chen brought up the subject with his son. "Marcus, we need to talk about Rex." Marcus immediately tensed. At 12, he was old enough to understand the political pressures his father faced, old enough to know that keeping a fully grown apex predator as a pet was considered insane by most standards. "They want to take him away, don't they?" Marcus asked quietly. Dr. Chen set down his fork and looked at his son, really looked at him. Marcus had grown up with Rex, had learned responsibility and compassion in ways that most children never would. He'd also learned to handle a creature that could level buildings, to read the moods and motivations of an apex predator, to establish dominance without aggression. "Not if I can help it," Dr. Chen said, "but we need to prove that Rex is safe, that he's not a threat." Marcus was quiet for a moment, then nodded. "What do we need to do?" "We need to show them that Rex's bond with you is unbreakable, that his loyalty transcends his predatory instincts. Are you willing to do that, Dad?" Marcus said, and for a moment, he sounded much older than 12. "Rex is my family. I'd do anything for him." From the next room came a soft rumble of agreement, as if Rex understood every word. The demonstration was set for the following week in the station's largest cargo bay. The entire senior staff would be present, along with a team of xenobiologists from Earth and 2 representatives from the Colonial Administration's Safety Committee. The stakes couldn't be higher. If Rex was deemed uncontrollable, he would be terminated. Marcus spent the week in preparation, working with Rex on commands and exercises they'd practiced hundreds of times. But there was a new element now: pressure. Rex could sense Marcus's anxiety and had become increasingly agitated as the day approached. "Easy, boy," Marcus murmured, running his hands along Rex's armored flanks. Rex was now 7.5 feet tall at the shoulder when standing upright, his weight approaching 800 pounds. His claws had reached their full length, 10 inches of razor-sharp natural weaponry that could punch through military armor. When he roared, the sound could be heard throughout the station. "Remember," Dr. Chen said as they prepared for the demonstration, "the key is to show Rex's intelligence and self-control. These people need to see that he's not just a tamed animal, but a thinking being who chooses cooperation over aggression." The cargo bay had been cleared and fitted with observation areas behind reinforced barriers. When Marcus and Rex entered, the assembled officials fell silent. Even the xenobiologists, who had studied predatory species for decades, seemed awed by Rex's presence. Rex padded beside Marcus with casual grace, but his golden eyes swept the room with predatory assessment. Here was a creature that could kill everything in sight and knew it, yet chose restraint. Administrator Collins, the station's chief administrator and Rex's primary opponent, stepped forward to the barrier's edge. "Dr. Chen," he said, his voice carrying clearly through the bay's speakers. "Before we begin, I want to state for the record that I consider this entire demonstration to be a dangerous breach of safety protocols. That creature should have been contained or destroyed months ago." Rex's head swiveled toward Collins, and a low rumble emanated from his chest. It wasn't quite a growl, but it was unmistakably a sound of displeasure. "Rex," Marcus said quietly, not looking at the predator but somehow conveying absolute authority in that single word. Rex immediately fell silent, though his gaze remained fixed on Collins. "As you can see," Dr. Chen said from the observation area, "Rex responds to Marcus's voice commands even when distracted by potential threats." The demonstration began with basic commands. Rex sat, lay down, rolled over, and performed complex acrobatic maneuvers that showcased both his physical abilities and his willingness to follow Marcus's lead. The assembled officials watched in amazement as 800 pounds of apex predator performed like a trained circus animal. But Collins wasn't impressed. "Parlor tricks," he said dismissively. "What happens when the boy's authority is challenged? What happens when Rex's predatory instincts override his conditioning?" Dr. Chen had anticipated this objection. "We've prepared a test for that scenario." Marcus nodded and walked to a control panel on the far side of the bay. "Rex, stay," he commanded, then activated a holographic projector. The air above Rex shimmered and resolved into the image of a Keth'vari warrior, one of Rex's natural prey species. The hologram was incredibly detailed, right down to the scent markers that would trigger Rex's hunting instincts. The effect was immediate. Rex's posture changed, his muscles tensing as every predatory instinct he possessed screamed at him to attack. His claws extended to their full length, and his lips pulled back to reveal fangs that could punch through steel. A low, menacing growl filled the bay. Several of the observers stepped back from the barriers. "Rex," Marcus said, his voice cutting through the predator's growing aggression. "No, stay." Rex froze, caught between instinct and loyalty. The internal struggle was visible. His muscles remained coiled for attack, but he didn't move from his position. "Good boy," Marcus said, then did something that made several observers gasp in horror. He walked directly between Rex and the holographic prey. For a moment, the bay was silent except for the sound of Rex's heavy breathing. The predator's golden eyes flicked between the hologram and Marcus, between instinct and choice. Then Rex relaxed, his claws retracting, his aggressive posture melting away. He padded over to Marcus and gently nuzzled the boy's shoulder, a gesture of affection and submission that spoke volumes about their relationship. Collins stared in disbelief. "Impossible," he muttered. "Not impossible," Dr. Chen said. "Rex understands that Marcus is his pack leader. His loyalty transcends his predatory programming." Marcus deactivated the hologram and scratched behind Rex's auditory organs. "That's my boy," he said softly. The vote was unanimous. Rex could stay. Present day. High Packleader Vorthak stared at the human who had not flinched at his dominance roar. In his long life, Vorthak had never encountered a being who could hear that sound without showing some sign of fear. Even other Keth'vari felt its power. But this human, this small, fragile-looking creature, had smiled. "I greet you, High Packleader Vorthak," Marcus said in carefully practiced Keth'vari, his accent imperfect but understandable. "I am Captain Marcus Chen of the human colonial fleet." Vorthak's scarred features shifted into what might have been curiosity. "You did not fear my roar, small human. Should I have?" Marcus asked, genuinely curious. The question sparked something like amusement in Vorthak's golden eyes. Behind the High Packleader, his two companions shifted restlessly, clearly unsettled by this human's behavior. Ambassador Harrison, having recovered some of his composure, stepped forward. "High Packleader, please forgive Captain Chen's informality. Humans sometimes react differently to—" "No," Vorthak interrupted, his gaze never leaving Marcus. "I would hear his answer." Marcus considered his words carefully. The truth was complex, personal, and might not translate well across species barriers. But something in Vorthak's expression, a genuine curiosity that reminded him of Rex's intelligent gaze, made him decide on honesty. "Your roar reminds me of an old friend," Marcus said. "He used to make similar sounds when he was happy to see me." The cargo bay fell silent. Even the other humans stared at Marcus as if he'd lost his mind. Happy? That sound was the voice of death itself, and he'd compared it to a greeting from a friend? Vorthak's head tilted, and Marcus caught a subtle shift in his scent, the Keth'vari equivalent of raised eyebrows. "You have known others of my kind?" Vorthak asked. "Not your kind exactly," Marcus said, "but similar. Very similar." He activated his personal communicator and scrolled through his files until he found what he was looking for. A video from just before he'd left for this mission. He turned the device so Vorthak could see the screen. The video showed Marcus in his private quarters aboard the orbital station, sitting on a couch that had been reinforced to handle extraordinary weight. Beside him, taking up most of the room, was Rex. Rex was now 12 feet long from nose to tail, built like a living tank, with armor plating that could deflect energy weapons and claws that could carve through spaceship hulls. He was, by any objective measure, one of the most dangerous creatures in known space. On the video, Rex was lying on his back like an oversized house cat, all four legs in the air, while Marcus scratched his belly and talked about the day's events. "This is Rex," Marcus said, showing the device to Vorthak. "I've had him for 15 years. The High Packleader's eyes widened, an expression Marcus recognized from watching Rex react to something surprising. "That is an Apex-class predator," Vorthak said, his voice careful and controlled. "That's what the xenobiologists called him, yes. They are the apex hunters of the deep void. My people tell stories of them. Creatures that hunt starships, that can survive in the vacuum of space, that know no fear and show no mercy." Marcus nodded. "Rex can do all of those things. But right now, he's probably sulking because I left without giving him his favorite treats." On the video, Rex had rolled over and was now resting his massive head in Marcus's lap, eyes closed in contentment as Marcus continued scratching behind his auditory organs. Vorthak watched the video in fascination. "He accepts your dominance?" "He accepts my leadership," Marcus corrected. "Rex isn't submissive. He's choosing to trust me." The High Packleader considered this for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice carried a new tone, something like respect. "Among my people, the ability to earn the loyalty of an apex predator is considered the mark of a true leader. You have raised and bonded with one of the most dangerous creatures in known space, and he follows you not from fear but from choice." Marcus felt a warmth in his chest that had nothing to do with the planet's thick atmosphere. Rex is family. Family protects family. Vorthak stepped closer, and Marcus could see the intricate scarring that covered the Keth'vari's hide, each mark telling a story of battles won and challenges overcome. When the High Packleader spoke again, his voice carried a ritual formality. "Captain Marcus Chen of the human colonial fleet, he said. "I name you pack friend. Bonded to the apex, leader of the dangerous. Your people will be welcomed among the Keth'vari as allies and equals." Behind Vorthak, his companions roared their agreement. A sound that made the other humans step back in alarm, but only made Marcus smile wider. "I am honored, High Packleader," Marcus said, "and I think Rex would like to meet you someday. He enjoys making new friends." Ambassador Harrison looked like he might faint, but Dr. Miller was frantically taking notes, and even Sergeant Bradley was grinning despite himself. As the formal ceremonies began and the real diplomatic work started, Marcus found himself thinking of Rex, alone on the orbital station, waiting for his return. He made a mental note to bring Rex some of the local Keth'vari delicacies, if they survived the diplomatic process, that is, but somehow he had a feeling that wouldn't be a problem. After all, he'd learned from the best teacher in the galaxy how to earn the respect of apex predators. Family protects family, and now humanity had found a new family among the stars. 6 months later, Rex would become the first non-Keth'vari to be granted the title of Honor Hunter by the Keth'vari Empire, after successfully mediating a dispute between two rival packs. His technique of lying upside down and purring until everyone calmed down was considered revolutionary in diplomatic circles. Marcus kept the video of Rex's investiture ceremony next to the one of his first belly rubs. Some things, he reflected, never change.